Welcome, Gunrunner.
There has been much talk in recent years over the issues of crossplay and whether console owners should be able to play games online against users of rival machines. Microsoft seemed to be all for it, while Sony were dead against it, but this dream has now become a reality with many more modern games making it possible. Turn back the clock some 40 years and you'll discover similar discussions about whether console owners should be able to play cartridges from rival systems on their own devices. And just like crossplay, this also became a reality despite an awful lot of resistance from the big players. With this in mind, I thought it'd be interesting to step back in time once again and examine 5 such examples of consoles that were able to play the games from their biggest rivals. So sit back, turn down the ghetto blaster, grab yourself a can of Quattro and join me on another retro gaming related history lesson.
It's Atari's video game Defender.
I played on ColecoVision.
Activision.
I played on ColecoVision.
Mattel's M Network and Imagic.
We played them on ColecoVision.
Introducing ColecoVision's first expansion module that lets you play all Atari 2600 compatible cartridges. And with all of ColecoVision's cartridges, that means you can play more games than any other video game system. It's simple. You can play Atari 2600 cartridges on ColecoVision, but you can't play ColecoVision on Atari.
ColecoVision, the expandable video game home computer system.
The ColecoVision Expansion Module 1 not only represents the first example of a system being able to play its rivals' games, but also the most famous one. Released shortly after the console's debut, it allowed the ColecoVision to play all Atari 2600 games by plugging them into a new cartridge slot. The model was basically a mini 2600 that stuck out the front of your console and included all the extra buttons needed such as difficulty switches, colour mode and reset button. Indeed, Coleco even released a standalone version called the Coleco Gemini as a direct rival to the then Atari video computer system. This led to an almost immediate lawsuit from Atari, with them claiming patent infringement. However, Coleco argued that because they had reverse engineered the hardware themselves and created their own custom chips and BIOS, this was not relevant. Fearing an Atari win though, Coleco decided to settle out of court and officially licensed the hardware patents from the Sunnyvale-based company. This also led to both Atari and Coleco creating games for each other's consoles. The ColecoVision adapter for the obscure VTech Creativision saw the tables turn from the previous entry, as the Hong Kong-based company, who are best known for their range of educational systems, created a device to expand the software catalogue of their own console. Also known as the Dick Smith Wizard in Australasia and Funvision computer video game system in parts of Europe amongst other names, the hardware contained within the Creativision shared a number of similarities with Coleco's own system. It featured an almost identical Texas Instruments video processor, the same sound chip and a similar memory setup, the only real change being a Rockwell 6502 processor in place of the ColecoVision Zilog Z80 CPU. VTech's ColecoVision converter would be made available for later revisions of the Creativision console. Early models would need modding for it to work, and their hardware sharing Laser 2001 computer. However, these converters were only sold in small numbers and are near impossible to find in today's market. It's likely that Coleco Industries weren't even aware of this unit's existence due to the limited success of the Creativision, and would have no doubt taken legal action had it been more well known. Not to be outdone by their big rival, Mattel Electronics also saw an opportunity to make Atari 2600 games playable on their own Intellivision console. However, the original model of the console wasn't suitable for such an expansion, so it wasn't made available until the redesigned Intellivision 2 system arrived in 1983. Although Mattel did actually provide a service where they would modify your original Intellivision master component to make it compatible. Like Coleco's similar adapter before it, the system changer just used the Intellivision itself to output the video and audio signals, with all the 2600's own chips being cloned to provide the compatibility. However, Atari decided against issuing a lawsuit this time around, most likely due to the fact that both companies already produced officially licensed third-party cartridges for each other's consoles. Due to the Intellivision 2 console arriving just as the North American video game crash hit, it sold in relatively small numbers, with the converters themselves being even scarcer. It also suffered from the fact that you'd need to go out and buy Atari compatible controllers to use with it, due to the radical differences of Mattel's own disc controller. Now the next one is very interesting indeed, because it doesn't feature an adapter of any kind. Rather, it can play games from a rival console right out of the box. But to explain this one properly, we first need to look at another console that is even more obscure than this one. In 1986, a Taiwanese company called Bit Corporation, who, at the time, were best known for their range of bootleg Atari 2600 games, created a console called the Dina 2-in-1. Originally created as an illegal clone of the ColecoVision for Asian markets, it was also able to play games from the hardware similar Sega SG-1002, hence the 2-in-1 part of the name. Due to both consoles being based on very similar technology, which would go on to be known as the MSX standard, Bitcorp were able to include 2 cartridge slots and a BIOS that would change depending on what slot was being used. This console also included an exclusive built-in game called Meteoric Shower, an Asteroids clone, which would later be released for the ColecoVision separately. Bitcorp would also develop their own games for use with the Dina 2-in-1, which were always ColecoVision based due to that system's larger market share. Over in the West, mail-order game specialist Telegames had taken note. They had previously been an official distributor of the ColecoVision in Europe and North America, and once Coleco stopped production, they wanted to continue selling the system and its games to their large base of consumers. So they acquired the rights from Coleco to officially distribute the Dina 2-in-1 as the Telegames Personal Arcade, promoting it as a ColecoVision compatible console. They also rebranded and re-released Bitcorp's range of ColecoVision games under the Telegames moniker too. Strangely, they made little to no mention of the SG-1000 compatibility in their advertising, and indeed, Telegames didn't even offer Sega SG-1000 games as part of their otherwise exhaustive product range. But they did make sure the SG-1000 mode was left intact, and it was still possible to utilise this compatibility option on their own version of the console. I still find it very strange that nobody ever developed a standalone SG-1000 converter for the ColecoVision, especially when an example of this hardware compatibility already existed. Both the Dina 2-in-1 and Telegames Personal Arcade are now very rare and sought after by collectors. Back in 1999, we were witness to one of the most staggering announcements in console history, as a new company called Bleem revealed that they had created a software-based PlayStation emulator for both the PC and Sega Dreamcast. The initial plan for Blemcast was that they would release a continuing series of what they called Bleem Packs, with each one supporting around 100 different PlayStation games. Rather than a standalone emulator that would natively play any PS1 game, the Blemcast software needed to be adjusted for each title, somewhat like a software patch, with small enhancements being made to each one such as anti-aliasing, bilinear filtering and doubling the resolution. Almost as soon as Blemcast was announced and shown to an amazed media, Sony themselves started throwing a seemingly endless stream of lawsuits at the Bleem company to try and halt its development. With Bleem only being a small organisation, this severely slowed down their progress, and meant that rather than releasing the promised Bleem packs, they were only able to put out 3 separate boot discs for Gran Turismo 2, Tekken 3 and Metal Gear Solid. Further discs were announced and demoed to the media such as WWF SmackDown and Final Fantasy IX, but the Bleem company announced their bankruptcy before they made it out the door. Although Sony didn't win any of the lawsuits issued against Bleem, fighting them put an enormous financial strain on the company, and they eventually ran out of money. Just a few months after the closure of Bleem, Sega announced that they were discontinuing the Dreamcast, and all hopes of the project being resurrected with their help ended. With this news, a former employee leaked the latest builds of the Blemcast emulator onto the internet, and several programmers and hackers soon found ways to build their own Bleemed games and boot discs. The commercial Blemcast product was notable as the only release on the Dreamcast that hadn't been pirated, as it had a very complex copy protection scheme. All 3 Bleem discs were finally cracked and made available online in December 2009, some 8 years after their introduction. You have to wonder if in a world where Blemcast had been available as originally intended back in 1999, the Dreamcast fortunes may have been different, especially as one of the main selling points of the rival PlayStation 2 was its backwards compatibility.
This is the day you have trained for. The day you have studied for. Utilize your superior skills. Your superior intelligence.
Sit down, rodent.
Oh dear.
Sarah, baby. Oh, you were one.
Don't make me hurt you.
Learn to defeat your ruthless enemy, Steve of Hackensack.
Brian, you're gonna get roofed.
Shut up, quadruped.
It's thinking.
And that concludes my look at 5 consoles that could play their rivals' games. Are there any other examples you can think of like these? Did you own one of these adapters back in the day? Or were there any adapters that you hoped for that never arrived? I always love to hear the views of my audience, so please get typing in that comments section and let me know your thoughts. Before I go though, I must thank all of my loyal patrons who continue to support my channel and make videos like this possible. However, I must give special thanks to the following patrons in particular for their much appreciated pledges: Mitchell Valentino, James Taylor, Neptune, Chaotic, Seth Robinson, Carl Olsen, Dos Gamerman, Tiago Piero dos Santos Silva and Electron Star Collapse. If you also want to help support all my creative endeavours, including this YouTube channel, then please go and check out my Patreon right now, where you can get access to host extra content, including downloads, exclusive videos, creative insights and much more besides. I've been the Laird, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again for another video very soon.